Welcome back to our series on firepower platforms and focused on ASA clustering. In this video, we're going to look at what happens to your traffic when you lose one of the ASA units that are part of a ASA cluster. Here we're going to focus on Unit 1 that owns our test connections at the moment, and as we crash that software and in turn we write the crash dump and reboot the unit, we're going to bring down the data interfaces out of that VPC port channel, and all the traffic is going to be directed only to Unit 1, which is going to continue existing connections and take over all the traffic. Consequently, the control plane is also going to go down, but actual chassis manager is going to keep these ports up and running. It's just that the ASA Unit 1 is not going to be using them at the moment until it comes up and is able to communicate back to the master and recover and come back into the cluster. So let's take a look at our consoles here. We have ASA Unit 1 on the left acting as the master. If I do go into one of the contexts here and just take a look at the connections, I do see two connections owned by this unit, SSH and UDP. If we go to the second context, I do have another SSH connection owned by this unit. On the right is the unit that's backing up those connections, and it is a slave unit in this cluster. Now looking at our switches here, we look at the port channels for ASA, the control, cluster link, and data links are all up and running, and everything is in a working order. Our FXOS manager is showing us all green ports and everything is working as expected. Now let's take a look at our test connections. We have a UDP connection and two TCP connections that I showed you. We're going to proceed now to lose our Unit 1. I will simply simulate a crash on this unit. And at this point, Unit 2 had become a cluster master and it took over all the traffic. If we take a quick look, we had a little bit of a hiccup here in traffic on UDP. It seemed like all the packets were received. It was just paused slightly, and our TCP connections are still up and running, as well as ICMP connectivity. So at this point, our chassis manager is going to report the data plane for Unit 1 to go down, as well as it will report the logical device to be out of the cluster. As you can see here, it's not responding. And what we'll do at the moment, just review our switch configurations here again, noting that data connections for our Unit 1 had been suspended from the data VPC to prevent black holing of traffic, and we can still see that the CCLs are actually in working order. As I mentioned, the chassis manager is ensuring that they're up and running. You can see here chassis manager for Unit 1 is now reporting both ports to be suspended from the cluster. Now we'll pause and wait for this ASA unit to come up and rejoin the cluster, and we'll capture what effects that carries on our traffic again. Now our ASA 1 unit had rebooted, come up and read its configuration. It had detected that there's a master present. It has sunk to configuration, and we'll transition to master slave unit. I can see that this unit is now a slave unit. And looking at any disruption in traffic, we're not seeing any UDP packets affected, and our TCP connections are up. Looking at our chassis manager, we now see all ports green, and the unit that was master before reboot has now become a slave unit. So this concludes our session on resiliency of the ASA cluster on FPR4100 platforms, and what happens to your traffic when ASA unit is lost out of the cluster that owns those connections. Thank you for watching.